of this, but I went through and scraped out all of the caulk along the inside edge of this companionway cover here where the slide goes, and I also did the same up top. So I scraped all of it, taped it all up, and now I'm about to go get a caulk gun from the hardware store and hit this with some silicone, because we had a little bit of a leak last night here, so I decided to go ahead and just fix it now so we don't have that issue anymore. It was coming through right around here somewhere. So just going to re-silicone all that up and we should be good to go. Okay, so I just got back from the hardware store, got my caulk gun and caulked all of this and then removed the tape, and it looks pretty clean. And then I've already got the companionway in place and I can't slide it back, so it's hard for me to get in and out. And then I got all that up front done and tape pulled off as well, so that should stop any leaks from that one area. Still have some other areas that have leaks, and my boat is trashed right now from doing all these projects, but we'll clean up here in a minute before dinner. Only bug us for a second. Go lay down.
Don't bother me at all. I am definitely a dog person.
Oh, and I love everybody in this town seems to be.
All right, this is your air intake. All right, what you can do is it's got two clips right here. You can pop that off, and there's just a strainer there.
Okay.
Okay, every now and then you want to pop that off, just check it, make sure there's no debris or anything stuck up in there.
Just run my little vacuum hose maybe and just
Yep. Yeah. All right, of course you got your transmission fluid here. Yes. You know where the dipstick is for that.
No, actually, right. I have not messed with it.
All right, right here's okay. The dipstick for that. All right, and then to check it, what you do, you spin it out. You got a paper towel?
Yeah.
All right, what you're going to do is you're going to spin it out, and this uses regular oil, so sometimes it's hard to see. So what I do is when you check it, you just stick it back in. You don't thread it in, just to where the threads touch. All right, and now it's going to be hard to see that, so what I do is I sit and lay it on a piece of paper towel, and now you can see how far it is.
The mark is. Okay.
So that's actually the high mark. It's not. It don't take a whole lot, but if it's anywhere up in here, you're fine.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay.
And my boat is not level right now.
Right, but it's still, it's going to be fine. Now, one thing you got to be careful with when you're putting this back in, it's real easy to cross thread it.
Okay.
Because it is plastic.
So no pressure, spin until it catches, and then make sure I'm in.
And then when it just stops, stop, because they break real easy.
Okay.
Engine dipstick.
Yeah.
Thing to remember with this, okay, whenever you're, after you've been running and for a while and you come back down, you pull the dipstick, a lot of times it'll come out looking just like that.
That was my first question, because I freaked.
Yep.
I pulled it and was like, no oil in my motor at all. But I'm like, my bilge is clean. There's no oil in my, okay, that's so
So what it does is, the reason it does that is this dipstick tube goes onto the very bottom of the pan.
Okay.
So when it's running, it draws the oil out of this tube. Well, this thing's kind of airtight, so it don't let the oil back in until you pull the dipstick out.
And then it seeps bloop, 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 and bubbles up it. Oh my goodness. So thank God. I was so worried.
Then you put it in there, let it set for a minute.
That makes me feel so much better.
And then you pull it back out.
Yeah, because I did like a week later.
And then you check your level.
Yeah, so, okay, that's so much.
And you notice it's a little bit higher on one side than the other.
Yeah.
That's not uncommon either, because when you put the dipstick in, it bends a little bit.
Oh, okay, that makes sense too.
So, All right, so yeah, I've had people overfill their engines because they pull the dipstick. It's like, oh my God, there's no oil in it, and they'll go throw 2 quarts of oil in it.
Freaked out. I literally did. I was like, and then I was like, he's not gonna believe me. I was like, then I checked it a week later, and it's fine. I'm like, oil can't just appear magically.
Yeah, it does. This particular engines do that.
Okay, good. All right, that's amazing.
Oil filter. All right, this has actually got an oil cooler on it. What it does is it uses antifreeze to go into this here, and it actually cools the oil. And this is actually a drain. If you ever needed to drain the antifreeze out of this engine, you can use this drain right here.
Pepcock right there. Okay.
Okay. Fuel pump. This is it's a mechanical fuel pump which is run off the injector pump.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if for some reason you ever have to change this filter, or if this engine runs out of fuel, you got a Raycor right here. All right. Which I would recommend replacing that before you get underway.
Okay, yeah, it does not look.
Yeah, and it's weeping.
Yeah.
So.
That's where it's coming from. There was a little bit of red liquid down in the bottom of the.
Yeah, more likely it's this.
Yeah, it's coming from.
Yeah. So that needs to be changed.
Okay, I've seen some videos on that.
Okay.
So.
Now, when you go to change this, 2 things. 1, shut your fuel valve off at the tank. All right, because what happens is, especially if the tank's way up there, when you take this loose, every bit of that fuel in that line is going to drain back to the tank.
Oh,
now you got this big column of air you got to get out.
Stuck, yeah.
So if you close the fuel tank valve, then you don't have a problem.
Okay.
Number 2, once you spin this off, when this here comes off, it's reusable, the clear bowl.
Okay.
When you get this filter, it's just going to be this part here.
Okay.
Get you a jug of diesel, clean diesel. Fill that filter back up before you spin it on.
Okay.
Then you don't have to bleed the fuel system. I mean, now when you start it, she may die.
Okay.
But then you just crank it a little bit more, and she'll start right back up.
Pump her a few times.
This thing's really considered self-priming.
Okay.
Okay. But now, if for some reason you change this filter, you pre-fill it, you got a bleed screw right here.
Yeah.
If you crack that screw and just sit there and pump this
until it comes,
it'll start coming out.
Okay. Awesome.
All right. And then you can do the same thing here. You can crack this fitting here and pump it until you got good fuel coming out of there.
Okay. So those are the 2 escape points from that pump.
That's your fuel supply. That's where it goes in, and it goes here, and then it comes out this line here to the injector pump, and this one goes to this line here, which returns back to the tank.
Okay.
Because diesel fuel, they always have a return because they never use all the fuel that they supply. They use that to help cool and lubricate the injectors.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if for some reason you're running, you hit the stop button and nothing happens, here's your stop solenoid.
Okay.
What you can do is you can come down here and pull back on that manually and shut this engine down.
Perfect. There was one question I had was what that was for one, and then where my cutoff is. So that answers both of them.
When you hit that red button, it energizes that solenoid and pushes that back.
I saw the exposed lubricant, and it just concerned me a little here.
Yeah. Now, normally there's a rubber boot.
Okay.
When you buy these, they'll have a rubber boot that goes over this,
so it doesn't get junk on it and everything. Okay.
But as long as it's moves fluid. But again, for some reason, if it don't work, you come back down here and just pull back on that, and it'll shut it off.
Yeah, because they're mechanical engines, not electrical igniting.
Right. You got these things are great. I love these things. All right, this is your injector pump. This is your high pressure lines. That's what goes to the injectors. Okay. So, yeah. Oh, you got they got the PSS shaft seal on this.
And what is that?
That's this here. Instead of a standard packing gland, they have this system here on. What you got to keep an eye on this is the rubber here. Make sure it's still pliable. Yeah. And then when you go back in the water, you can pull back on this a little bit, and they should be water come out.
Okay. And
then once you let loose, it should stop.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. Yes, I'll just make sure it doesn't get any dry rot in it or anything.
This thing's in gear.
Is it really?
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, all right. So this is your expansion tank. This is where you check your coolant level.
Yep.
Okay. Now on this, the heat exchanger is actually inside of this. Now, you have 2 oil fills, one here, and one here. You don't really ever have to use this one. It's just for the application to where if this had something over top of it, then you could actually fill the oil here.
Okay.
When you change the oil, you pull it out through the dipstick tube.
Okay. With a pump.
You can get a hand pump and just a hose that fits over this,
Okay.
and you can pump it right out, and it'll pump every bit of it out.
Okay. Perfect.
So,
Because that goes to the very bottom.
very bottom, right? All right. So we've covered the fuel. Like I said, anytime you spin these filters off, if you pre-fill them before you put them back on, it'll save you a whole lot of time and effort.
Yeah.
Okay.
Only one I can't do is.
This one don't really matter, but normally what I'll do is if
I had opened it once to see, because
okay.
when it scared me that there was no oil, I
Yeah,
broke that
okay.
loose to see if anything came out, so it did run a little bit of black oil out of there.
this filter works, but I've got one. It's a 1334 or a 1358 is the ones you need.
Okay.
This one's a 1365. It's a little bit too small.
Okay. And say that one more time, those numbers.
A 1334 or a 1358.
Okay. I mean, I know the camera's
Right.
getting it, but I'm just trying
Yep.
to make a mental
Not
note.
all right. So now these lines here, this line here, that goes to your water heater here, and then you got another one that returns over to the other side. What that does is that sends antifreeze to your water heater, so you'll have hot water while you're underway.
Oh, so that's what heats it. It doesn't have its own heating element?
It does. It's got electric also.
Okay.
This does both, electric and underway.
Yeah, I felt it was really hot after motoring
Yep.
here. I was like, whoa. I was like, and that makes sense why people shower right after they're underway, I guess.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, this is for some reason they got that thing mounted sideways.
Yeah, I plugged it in, and I never got any hot water from it. So I don't know if there's a switch somewhere or how to. But when I was underway, obviously it heated. good.
Now the heating element may be bad in it.
Yeah, and it just doesn't work anymore.
You're right. So, all right, this is your throttle. This is your throttle cable here. All right. That should have a spring on it. But, you know, as long as it's going full travel and everything, you're fine there.
I guess that.
Yeah, that's just the rubber boots that go on there and keeps dust and stuff out. C valve. Whenever you go back in the water, as a rule of thumb, whenever you get pulled out of the water, go through and close these.
Okay.
Because right now, this is...
Yeah.
So,
Got
but
air
fortunately, this is below the water line, so it shouldn't be a problem. If it's above the water line, it could cause a problem.
and have air pocket.
Yep. Okay, that's some epoxy or something there. All right. You got a fuel lift pump there for some reason.
Is that the black one?
Yeah.
Back there? Yeah, and I think it runs to. I
Oh,
swear.
I bet that's a priming pump.
Yeah, because
Yep.
it cuts it on when it.
Yep, that's probably whenever you change the filters and stuff, you can prime the fuel system with that, which is fairly cool.
Okay, cool.
You do have a small inverter there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got your start battery up there.
Yeah, and this.
Yep.
And it only powers this one, I think.
Yeah.
I must have something plugged in actually that it runs to, because it only normally does that when I'm plugged in.
All right, and then let's see. You got your house batteries, your start batteries.
Okay, so that's my battery that starts.
Yep.
And this is in parallel, I'm assuming, with the other two that I have up there.
Right.
Okay.
All right, and now this is your overflow bottle. If the engine's hot, then you can always add antifreeze to this here.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, because on the way here, it was empty when
Right.
we got the hot warning. So I put water in it, actually, just to put something in there. And I went to between the lines, and I think it's still between the lines. So.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, and then mixing elbows right here. This here is one of the Achilles heels of this engine.
Okay.
About every 5 years, you're going to need to replace that.
Okay.
Okay, they rust out and they start leaking, and also they'll get clogged and won't let water go through, and that'll cause your engine overheat.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
I may replace that real soon because I bought the 2.5-inch exhaust hose that goes to the muffler.
Right.
My surveyor recommended replacing it because it's
Actually, that should be 2-inch. That should be 2-inch exhaust hose.
Okay.
Well, no, maybe it might be 2.5.
I took a caliper to the part in the back bedroom that after it goes through the wall, and I think that's what I got was 2.5.
Okay, that might be 2.5. They may have the larger one on there. Because normally it's 2.5 that goes over the fitting, but if they got another fitting threaded in there, they got it bumped up to 2.5 probably.
Okay, cool.
Okay. All right, so that's pretty much everything on this side. You got your engine mounts. So, and like I said, went over primer bulb here, primer pump, fuel shut off.
Yep.
This is your crankcase breather. Basically comes back to your air filter. That way any oil that goes, oil vapors that's in this gets sucked back in, reburnt.
Okay. And one thing, I may change this gasket under here soon,
right,
because it looks like it's leaking from that corner there, was where I thought I could see it a little more wet than...
Yeah, you got a little bit of oil seeping right there.
You know, so...
But that's just a matter, you got 3 bolts. 1, 2, 3. Take this hose off, this whole thing lifts out.
Okay.
Make sure if you got a little shop vac or something though, try to clean out around it first.
So it doesn't go in.
That way when you take that off, you don't have stuff falling into your engine.
Okay. That little fuel pump's dripping. I just saw it drip after I turned that pump on, so I probably need to look at that hose or something. Okay, and yes, so I'm glad everything you've shown me, that is perfect. I'm just processing everything in my head and seeing if there's any other questions. Do you see anything that I mean, you're not running the motor or anything. I know that's hard to say, but I don't know if you see anything.
I'm not seeing anything that's jumping out at me.
Okay.
You know, all your fuel lines, all your connectors look good. I'm not seeing any chafes or anything like that.
When I take this off and clean out the strainer, should I vacuum this and clean all the bottom part out too?
You can. If you got something that'll reach in there, you can.
Okay.
And then you can also get a bottle brush. Go in there and clean this lens.
Okay.
But you don't want to use metal. You always want to use plastic, because that's just a plastic lens.
Okay.
So you don't want to scratch it up.
Okay.
Let's see.
And then I do want to inquire about how to fill these batteries. I think they're wet cell.
Oh, okay.
I haven't touched them since I got the boat.
All right.
So.
Yeah, these are wet cell. And
you need a flathead?
I need a flathead screwdriver.
Okay, let me grab one real quick. Watch out, Patchy.
Yeah, I just went to Lowe's and bought a bunch of these because I'm always going through flat tip screwdrivers for some reason.
Yeah.
All right, these just pop up. All right, and then you can see down in there. And what you want to look for is make sure the water is over the little metal pieces down there.
Okay.
Okay, you don't want to overfill them, but.
Okay, so it needs.
I mean, you could add water right now if you wanted, but you only want to use distilled water.
Yes, and I looked for it at Walmart and didn't see it, but I need to get some for
You
sure.
can probably get some at the pig down here.
So, show me one more time which part is the metal that's underneath that tube.
Right. That's your plates. That's where the batteries. You know. If you look, there's like a vented. Looks like almost like a radiator type thing in there.
Yes. Just make sure liquid's
Make sure
over
the water's
that.
over those.
Okay. And it looks like it is.
Yep.
So, okay.
Because these batteries were put in 16, so.
Yeah, they're getting close to being old.
Yeah.
I've already looked at replacements, but I'm gonna run them until they break because I don't. It's working right now.
It's the same thing with this one over here. Just move these, pop them up. You know, you're probably gonna have to lift up on this battery lead here.
Yeah. And be tough to get to.
Yeah.
But I can get to that, and I can use a little syringe bulb or something like that.
I mean, you can get just a little battery thing, you know, that you can use. It's a battery tester and. All right, now.
Oh, that like it goes in and checks the.
That alkaline. Well, yeah. Battery. This is your belt. Okay, you got the alternator over here. How good of access is it to the other side of this engine?
Not great. You got to kind of be down on your shoulder.
Yeah, because right there's where the raw water pump is.
And I've taken off once and looked at that.
Okay, good. You know where that's at and what a pain it is to get
Yeah,
to.
and it looked brand new.
Yeah.
So I didn't pull it out because I didn't want to cause damage to it.
I would say about every 2 years, change it.
Okay.
Because it's easier to change on a cold engine sitting at the dock than it is out in the middle of a channel somewhere on a hot engine. Because that's when it's going to go out.
Yeah.
So about every 2 years, I'd recommend changing. And believe it or not, hours really don't matter on impellers as much as I found people who use their engine more have less trouble out of their impellers. Because what happens is, like if this engine sets for 3 or 4 months, that rubber gets hard and gets frozen memory
position.
So then when you start it up, it's working against that memory. A lot of times that breaks them faster than anything.
Okay.
All right, and this hose here, it looks like it's been replaced with the aftermarket. That's but that's fine. It's just an antifreeze heater hose.
Okay.
Here's another drain valve for your antifreeze. All right, this is your freshwater pump. Every now and then you want to come in here and
see if it's still tight.
Well, if you see how you hear how it's clicking,
A little bit of play.
all right. If you start noticing antifreeze pulling up down here underneath it, then that pump's going bad.
Okay, and it looks like it's old, and I thought about buying one. It's $100 just to have.
I would probably, and it's not that hard to change. It's just if you don't have one with you, you're stuck.
Yeah. Okay, I think I'm gonna order one just to have on the boat, and I may leave it until I start seeing signs.
All right. Yeah, I wouldn't mess with it, but it'll start pulling up. You'll start seeing antifreeze pulling up underneath here.
Okay.
All right. All right. Any other questions you got?
From this angle, this side, everything. No, I think you really got rid of a lot of my concerns on things that I guess I kind of knew, but I just wanted to see it on my motor, like the engine stop. You know, it showed it in so many different positions on the manuals, on the diesel things, and
now right here is your your oil alarm.
Okay.
This here, if you start having problems with that, that's your oil alarm. Now, if you wanted to put a temperature gauge,
yes, I kind of do.
There's a way you can put an oil gauge and a temperature gauge on this.
Okay.
Right here, this is an 1/8 inch pipe thread. So just get you a T, then you can put a oil pressure sender
on one side,
and an oil pressure switch on the other.
Yeah.
And then up here, you've got, where'd it go? Right here's your alarm switch, your temperature alarm. All right, what a lot of people do right here where this goes off to the heater, they'll take this fitting out and put a T here.
Okay.
And put a temperature switch sender there, and it goes to a gauge.
Okay. So that's 2 options of how to do it.
Right. So yeah, and because this here goes down to your oil cooler. But no, you can tee off of this one here
and then do it
and then throw your temperature switch in, or temperature sender in there. So, and then you can have a set of gauges mounted up top, or you can have them down here if you wanted. But either way, that's where that would have to go in at.
Yeah, it would just make me more comfortable. But I mean, I do have that infrared thermometer now, but it just stinks being single-handed to have to come down here.
And I was going to say, with a set of gauges, you can look down there. Okay, my engine's running at 180. Oh, well, now it's running at 190. Is there a problem? You can a lot of times.
I change my RPMs.
Right.
Or...
But now, one thing I did want to show you though is right here.
Okay.
You have end caps on this heat exchanger.
Yes, both sides.
All right. If for some reason you pull that raw water pump impeller out and the blades are gone, right here's where they're going to be.
Okay.
So what you need
lodged into
So what you can do is just there's two bolts right here. You can set and take those 2 bolts out, and this whole end cap will come off.
Yeah.
And then you can clean out any debris and stuff.
Okay.
And it's reusable O-rings. You don't have to have new gaskets or anything like that.
Okay.
You just bolt it right back in. You're good to go.
All right.
All right.
I thought about pulling it to check it, but I haven't touched it yet.
And
the heat
then
exchanger,
you can also, you can, excuse me. every now and then you can set and acid clean these.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
With a descaler.
Descale. I usually use Barnacle Buster.
Okay.
All right. And what you can do, there's a couple ways you can do it. You can close your C valve, pull this hose here,
yep, and
pour it in. And what it's going to do is it's going to go into your heat exchanger, and it's going to sit there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. No. On this one, you got the raw water pump there. Huh. All right. Well, probably the easiest way is going to be to.
Does the heat exchanger tube not come free? Can I pull it out and like?
Oh, you can. You can, but you're gonna have to drain all the antifreeze to do it.
Oh yeah. Okay. Because I was gonna think I'll pull it and I'll make like a special PVC pipe thing that I can screw shut, pour descaler in there, drop it in, and I'll just keep it on the boat. Yeah. But if I'm gonna have to drain coolant and everything every time, yeah, if there's an easier way.
Well, really the easiest way would be to, like I said, just pump it through. Because what I do is I'll set and take the hose. Yeah, you can do that. Just set and take this hose here off, and this hose here off, the inlet and the outlet. All right, get you another one of these hoses here, and then you could actually put it in a bucket. And if you had like a little pump, because I use a pump that I circulate it through.
Oh, and it just keeps running it through.
Right. But I mean, the easiest way, like I said, just pull the end caps and set and take your on a gun cleaning kit, the little push rod, just go through there and clean out the tubes.
Yeah, and just push through each tube.
Yeah. So.
All right.
But
yeah, and I think.
And this is where your thermostat is.
Yes, I almost pulled that as well, but to test it, I was gonna throw it in some boiling water. But also, does this motor have spots for zincs?
Nope.
Okay.
There's no zincs on this engine. And
should I have a zinc on it?
No.
Okay.
No, it's from the. And the reason is because the O-rings. The heat exchanger itself is never in contact directly with other metal. So there's no electrolysis supposedly happens on this stuff.
Okay, good. I did a lot of scrubbing though. She looks way decent.
This is something you need to address. This is positive. Yeah, that's because this is coming off your positive. Wait a minute. I may have told you that. Yeah, this is off your positive side here.
Yeah, coming to a negative bus bar.
Yeah, they just got it clamped on there.
Oh yeah, it's not even attached to it.
Well, I mean, even if you just put a boot over this or something, because that can arc right there.
Yeah. I've been drawing wiring diagrams in my tablet, and so I just now recently think I fully understand how to run bus bars, fuse blocks, all that. So now I can kind of go in and. But I'm glad you're seeing issues like that. But I know I need to go in and make some changes.
It just caught me off guard
when you see black, and red.
I know. I'm like, wait a minute. Surely to God they ain't got that.
Yeah. Yeah, and they just have a block under it with a zip tie.
And then this ain't marine grade. This wire here.
Yeah,
that's not marine grade. That's probably going to need to be changed whenever you go in. I mean, it's not. Grand scheme of things, it's not hurting anything, but.
No, I definitely want to make some changes on the electrical. I'm gonna go a little bit at a time and just change what I think looks worse first. And I've already been doing a lot of heat shrink adapters where they had non-marine. I've just take a day and I'll just cut wires and reattach them, if they've got bad connectors. Okay, let me see what else there was that I wanted to ask. I think this motor says that it's 3,800 RPM is what?
30, usually 36.
36, okay.
No loads 38.
Okay.
Loads max is 36.
Okay.
Cruising on this is probably going to be between 25 and 28.
Okay.
All right, that's where they're kind of the happiest.
Okay. That's one thing I
But
wanted
I
to
tell
know.
people, again, a lot of it depends on how it's propped. When do you hit haul speed? At what RPM? Because once you hit haul speed, basically anything else you're just blowing exhaust, fuel out the back.
Because your actual water line doesn't have the properties to
Right.
go any faster
Right.
than that.
Once it hits, you just wasting fuel at that point. But the extra RPMs, the extra throttle helps when you're going into like wind, seas, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
current and everything.
Let's see what else. Now, one thing along with the line of starting the engine and stuff like that. If you've changed the fuel filter and everything, you go to start this engine, it don't start. After 1 or 2 tries, if it still don't start, close your seawater valve.
Okay.
All right. Then you can crank the engine and do whatever you need to. The problem is if you keep cranking this engine with the water valve open, you're still pumping water.
Yeah.
And you'll fill that exhaust up and it can actually get into the engine.
Okay.
So I always
good
tell
to know.
people, if you don't start after 2 or 3 times, shut the water valve.
Because it's not lubricating anything. The water's just there to lower temperature. And
Yeah.
you're not going to get hot because you're just trying to get it to start.
Right.
So then you
Now,
can
once
just
it
shut that off.
starts,
And,
you can leave it run and come down here and open up the valve. It's not going to hurt anything. You
Okay.
can run this for a minute without.
without water. It's not going to literally cause problems on metal or anything like that.
See,
Because
that's
there's no
it's not.
lubrication.
The oil's still lubricant. The
Yeah,
oil's your lubricant. All that
exactly.
seawater does is for cooling.
It's cool, yeah. And I'm just thinking through it in my head, that makes perfect sense. So, yeah, that's a really good thing to know. I didn't know that. I would have never thought of that. So,
Yeah.
awesome.
Because I've seen people fill their cylinders full of water, because what happens, it fills the exhaust up. It needs the exhaust pressure to push the water out. Well, if the engine's not running, you're not getting the exhaust pressure.
Yeah.
So it literally, and then when you stop cranking, that water flows right into the cylinders. Now you're hydrolocked.
Yeah.
And then you're pulling injectors, and that turns into a nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't want to do that. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me see if there was anything else at all that I needed to ask about. If I get back on the water this very next time and it runs again for 2 hours and then shows me a temperature warning,
Right.
what would your thoughts on first thing I should do be?
Check your antifreeze level.
Again, so
Again.
make sure that that reservoir...
If that reservoir's empty again, then you may be shooting water out of your heat exchanger.
Okay.
You're not finding it in the bilge, so it's probably going overboard with the exhaust.
Okay. It did look
One
when
other thing, I want to get your key, though, is I want to turn the keys on and just check the alarms real quick.
Yeah. I did see some oily kind of looking stuff on top of the water where my exhaust was coming out when I was at Hurricane Boatyard. So would that be me sending fuel through? Or...
Yeah. Now that might just be because the engine hadn't ran in a while. With it, you may have dirty injectors, which will probably clean up after you run it for some.
Okay.
When the engine starts up cold, these here don't have glow plugs. So there's always going to be a little bit of unburnt fuel that's going to come out with the exhaust.
Okay.
Now, if it's constantly doing that and, white steaming and smoking and stuff, then you might have an issue. But
Yeah. No, it tends to go away pretty
Yeah.
quick, so it seems like it's running pretty clean. So.
yeah, so that's not a problem. That's not uncommon with this
Okay, good.
particular
I'm
engine.
just making sure.
So your audible alarm's working. Because the alarms, you got your temperature alarm here. This is your oil pressure, and this is your charge.
Yeah. And the charge is not coming on when I turn the key, right?
Well, they got this aftermarket one on, so they may not even have that thing hooked up.
Okay, because I was reading the manual and it said it should come on, and
It
I'm
should
like, well,
come
mine's
on,
not.
but the thing is, they may have it bypassed. But so your audible alarm's working, the horn's working. So you should,
So when that temperature comes on, maybe it doesn't go off till a certain high temperature, or...
No, it should. When that light comes on, this alarm should go off.
Okay, well, yeah, it didn't. So I don't know if I need to check the wire from that light to the speaker or what.
Yeah, because the light's working. So, because you got voltmeter there. I mean, yeah, you could come in and put your gauges right here if you want.
Mm-hmm.
So
I may do that at some point, depending on what I decide. But I'll just keep an eye on it, and I'll be very conscientious. I'll walk down every 30 minutes of motoring and use my little check temp, all that, and I just won't take it for granted. It's my biggest fear is doing actual damage to this motor. That's one thing that I'm not financed for.
And like I said, after you may have gotten low on antifreeze after a couple of hours. Did you check the level before you left?
I checked. I thought I did, but I think now I was looking at a stain on that reservoir. I even held a flashlight up to it and was trying to tap it to see
with
if
the
it
engine cold. Get in the habit of checking the engine.
Yes.
Don't buy with the reservoir. Take the lid off.
Yeah.
Check. Make sure you got antifreeze in there.
When we got back, once we got here, I did that a few days after getting here, and it started coming out, and I got it all the way off, and it was full up to the top of bright green antifreeze.
Oh, so, that's good.
So I think it was, I don't know, maybe it was just, he did increase RPMs a little while before I saw it, and once I opened up that insulated compartment, it seemed to clear out and cool off a little bit better.
If it does that again, and you have good antifreeze level, then check your heat exchanger. Pull those end caps.
Yeah.
Make sure there's no debris and build up in that.
That was my next step.
What happens is, if it's low on antifreeze, it's going to overheat and it's going to pretty much stay hot even when you bring the RPMs back.
Okay.
With a dirty heat exchanger, when you throttle up, it may overheat, but when you bring the throttle back, it should cool off.
Okay.
And that's an indicator of raw
which
water.
one it could be.
Right.
Okay, that's good to know as well. All right, well then I feel a lot more confident. And when we got here after, it had the temperature alarm, when we fired it up to pull it into the lift well, it still just immediately. I mean, it instantly starts.
Oh, yeah.
And it seems to be in good shape in that respect.
Well, and that's what I tell people. So the thing you got to remember, these things started off life in the agriculture field. These are farm tractor engines.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I'm glad they are, because they have that durability named.
And then Yanmar just marinizes them, but I mean, they're great engines, and like I said, I don't care that much for the newer ones, because now they're starting to get into electronics and stuff like that. And I'm sorry, electronics and seawater to me just you're asking for trouble. So
exactly.
But
all right. Well,
and again, you have my phone number. If anything else comes up, you run into any problems, give me a call.
Absolutely.
And, we'll try to walk either that or text me, and I can.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm fine even, Venmoing you for an hour, 30 minutes of your time if I ever get in a dire situation.
I don't charge people for advice.
Well, I appreciate that, because I really do. If I get into a, like, oh my gosh, I'm frazzled moment, being able to make a phone call like that could really help a lot.
Oh, yeah.
So I really appreciate that.
So like I said, I got people calling me from the Caribbean all the time. They got a mechanic down here who's wanting to do this.
Right. So, okay, well, I do feel a lot more confident. I'm sure we missed one or two things that I probably was wanting to ask you. I should have written everything down, but I think we've covered all the main things that I was concerned about. Like I said, the one with the oil, no oil, I was like, he's not going to believe me. When I pulled that dipstick and it was bone dry, I was like, oh my God,
It's amazing, like I said, I get calls all the time. It's like, I overfilled my engine. And as soon as they say what engine it is, I know you pull the dipstick, they wasn't known on it.
I thought about it. I almost went and got oil and thought about it. Okay, so 15W40 for this one?
15W40.
What is the T4, T5, T6 on the Shell Rotella?
T4 is just your regular oil. Okay. Your T5 is a mix. It's a blend of synthetic and regular conventional oil. T6 is strictly synthetic.
Fully synthetic. So what do you recommend for
T4.
this? So that just regular conventional.
Regular conventional oil.
Okay.
Problem you run into if you start using synthetic, she's going to start leaking, and she's going to start burning oil.
Smaller particle size.
It's going to leak. It's going to burn. It just makes a mess.
Okay. Perfect.
So go with this. This here is designed for conventional oil.
Yeah.
So just go with that.
Last thing, what, I know this is a big question, so you don't have to dive in real deep, but what spare parts would you carry if you were me going to cruise through the Caribbean, Central America, South Pacific?
All right. I would carry spare belts, all your filters, carry probably 4 or 5 gallons of diesel with you. At least enough oil for an oil change. All right. Impellers. Carry a couple impellers with you. You may. I would say, like you said, since that is an old freshwater pump, I'd go ahead and get the freshwater pump. Carry it with you.
Yeah.
As a rule of thumb, I tell people only carry parts that you can change yourself at anchor.
Yeah.
I've had people carry extra alternators. I've had people carry extra injectors. I had one guy had a complete cylinder head. And the problem was, whenever he got time to use it, they were destroyed from rust and everything because they'd been stored on his
Sitting
boat
out
for 6
so
years.
long, yeah.
You know, so I tell people I call it perishable items on the engine: belts, impellers. You could carry a couple hoses with you if you wanted.
Yeah, or lengths and stuff to cut
different
it.
lengths
and some,
in case
obviously some
something happens.
clamps.
Electrical, any fuses, maybe carry a couple extra breakers with you, some wiring, light bulbs, stuff like that. Like I said, again, it's stuff that you're going to repair. Now, the nice thing about Yanmar is you can get parts anywhere in the world.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So, if you do get down somewhere and God forbid the transmission goes out or, something like that, it's going to be an inconvenience, but it's not something that you need to carry with you because, again, on a sailboat, I tell people you want to kind of limit what you carry because I tell myself it's like a big chest type freezer. Guarantee you everything you want is going to be in the very bottom.
Yeah,
so,
you got,
so...
Yeah.
The less you can get by with, the better off you are.
Okay. Oh, I'm gonna check the time real quick because I haven't looked at the time.
Because I showed up actually early, so we should be in good shape.
Yeah, it's only 12:40, so I've
Okay,
still got
good.
hours. The one other thing, what coolant? So the manual is really old, but it says to run anti-rust coolant mixture and
Go with your standard green Prestone. A lot of the newer Yanmars, they recommend running the Rotella ELC, which is a extended life antifreeze.
Okay.
The problem with that is it has a tendency to sludge up.
Okay.
The best thing to do is just go with your standard run-of-the-mill green ethylene glycol antifreeze.
Okay, and that's the same for road vehicles as it would be for this. Okay, because I never saw anything designate anything as marine.
The only thing you have to watch is your oil. It has to be Rotella or a diesel rated oil.
Okay.
Now in the transmission, it uses a straight 30 weight.
Okay.
But in a pinch, you can put the 15W40 in there. It's not going to kill it.
Okay. And when and why would I be filling that spot with the 30 weight?
You want to check. Bless you.
Thank you. Ugh.
You see where the dipstick was?
Yes.
That's where you're going to pull this oil out, and that's where you're going to fill it back in with.
Yeah.
All right, and then you're going to about every 250 hours, you want to change that transmission oil.
Okay.
Or
and that's that one in the back with the dipstick, and I can just suck it out of that same hole and fill in that same hole.
And that only takes maybe a half a quart at the most.
Okay.
I mean, it don't take
and
a
that's
lot
just
of oil.
15W30?
Straight 30 weight.
Straight 30 weight.
SAE 30.
Okay, so that's all it's
Yep.
called. Okay. I've never done transmission stuff.
Yeah, and then it's just a Rotella ELC.
Okay.
Rotella 15W40 for the engine oil.
Yeah. T4.
Yeah. And then, yeah.
Okay, well, I think that covers all the stuff that I was really... Because I didn't want to start buying anything or oil until I talked to you. Because it does not say in the manual. I have 3 different Yanmar manuals for this motor, and it does not list an oil type or weight in it anywhere. I saw one spot.
A lot of it depends on where you operate.
Temperatures and all that kind of stuff. So
now, once you get down to the Caribbean, you could probably go to, if you're going up north, where it's colder, then you can probably go to a 30 weight,
Yeah.
straight 30 weight.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, in the Caribbean and this area and stuff here, a 15W40 works real good.
That's what finally I found a temperature chart that showed which oils for what, and
Right.
15W40 seemed to cover all the temperatures that I would be traveling in. It had a large range as well. So, okay, well that makes me feel a lot better. I think that is everything. I really do.